Hi, I'm Rob Cosman. Welcome to my shop. One of the advantages of woodworking for a long time, you eventually figure out ways to fix things. You sometimes call them hacks. Well, I'm going to show you a collection of some of my favorite. These may really help you at just the perfect time. Stay with us. I'm Rob Cosman and welcome to my shop. We make it our job to help take your woodworking to the next level. If you're new and you haven't subscribed, please do so. Hit the notification bell so you'll receive alerts when we release a new video. And anytime we use a special tool, we'll always leave a description down below. All right, let's get to work. If you woodwork, you need clamps. In fact, it's often been said you can't have too many. My favorites are these Bessie. They're called F clamps. And what I like about them is they're just so convenient. They've got a nice swivel on that head. It has a tendency to keep itself nice and flat. It's solid, so it doesn't leave a mark. The downside is, and you'll learn this as you get older, it's very tough to get a lot of grip and strength on that smooth handle. So if you've ever played hockey or seen it, you'll notice at the top end of the stick always has a method of tape used to improve your grip. So I said, why not do that with this? So let me show you. I'd almost call this the best hack of all. Take hockey stick tape, make one wrap around the handle, and strip it down, oh, maybe 10 inches or so, and give it a spin. And in doing that, it's going to turn into a cord. Then what you're going to do is wrap that cord in a circular pattern around the handle, and then come back and cover it from one end to the other. Strip it off right there. And now you can actually get some torque on that thing and some good grip. I do it on all of mine. Works fantastic. This next hack was shared with me by a couple of fellow woodworkers, and it is a good one. If you've watched me cut dovetails, you've seen me cut that little rabbet or rebate on the inside edge of the tailboard. I use my Lie-Nielsen skew block plane, and I love what this does. When it comes time to transfer tails onto pins, that little rebate catches the inside edge and perfectly aligns the two pieces. Now, if you don't have a skew block plane, or if you're in a situation where you can't afford to make that cut, such as drawer making where it would change the outside dimension, what you can do, I prefer to use automotive painter's tape. One of the reasons I like it is it's a little bit thicker. It actually measures 5/1000ths of an inch. Put about 4 layers on there. And it's stickier than regular painter's tape. Now before I do this, I'm going to trim off the excess. Take my marking gauge with that same setting and take a couple of passes to cut all the way through that tape. Then peel it off on the side that actually makes contact with the tail, sorry. Now, when you set that on there, it'll do the same thing and help align those two pieces. After you're done, you can simply go in and peel that off, and no one will ever know the difference. There you go. I was once told if you enjoy flying model airplanes, you better like rebuilding them. And the parallel to woodworking is, if you do woodworking long enough, you're going to have to go in and be able to fix mistakes. Dents are the worst. Well, let me show you a great hack for that. I've got a piece of walnut, and now there's a dent in it. So there it is right there. What are you going to do to get rid of it? Well, depending on how severe it is, take a little bit of water. Doesn't have to be carbonated. If it was a light enough dent, I would just use a damp cloth, but I'm going to put some water right in the dent. Then I'm going to take a clean cloth. You want to make sure it's clean. You don't want any marks left on there. I'm going to put a little extra water in the cloth. And with a nice hot iron, which I've had in this shop for over 30 years, really steam that. Now I'm moving the iron around so that I'm not taking all the heat out of one spot. A lot of pressure. Still a little bit moist. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, there was our dent. Actually, I can feel a little bit of a depression. Let me go a little more water on that. I might have hit it too hard. I've got that setting on high. Sometimes you may have to fold the cloth in half. You don't want to burn the wood. Okay, now let's take a few passes with the plane and see what that does. The idea is to completely eliminate it. Now I realize you can't take off too much material. All right, so we took off enough to get rid of the ink, and there's no evidence of a bump. That is slick. This hack everybody needs to know about. Get yourself an iron and always have it handy. If you're joining boards using pipe clamps have been around a long time and they're relatively inexpensive and very effective. However, here's a problem that I discovered. The more you tighten it, the more it has a tendency to pull on one side. So it wants to cup your boards like that as a result of additional force. So here's what I found. Take a piece of 3/4 inch dowel and split it on your bandsaw. Seems to be the safest way to do it. Then we want a nice smooth surface here to protect the wood we're going to be joining. So using your shooting board and a hand plane, let's go in and smooth up that surface. You need two, one for each side. All right, now taking some painter's tape, just put that piece of dowel on the edge. Now the shape of the dowel will act to center the force on the clamp and send it right down through the middle of the board. And this will keep that joint from popping one way or the other. Of course, you always want to stagger your clamps as well, but I found this great for putting that force right down through the middle. And if your dowel is long enough and wide enough and nice and smooth, it also serves to protect the edge from the rough clamps. There's a good hack for you. We've been talking a lot lately about making small boxes, and if you plan to dovetail them and you're talking about dovetailing in narrow stock, it can be difficult to get those cuts across the end of the tailboard perfectly perpendicular, and that is critical. I'm going to show you a good hack. Take a thicker piece of soft wood, in this case it's a piece of pine, put it in behind. Now when you lay out your dovetails, what you're going to do, I'll just do this real quick, it's below. Now what I'm doing is I'm running my lines all the way across that second piece, or that backup piece, and it's going to give me a lot of extra reference for my saw. I'll just put these angled lines on here real quick. Ideally, if you had a piece of basswood or something really soft, so that you almost don't even notice it when you're sawing through it, but yet you have it there to help align your saw. Always want that piece standing plumb. Seems like a lot of extra work, but if you want to get these right and you haven't quite nailed it, so by using that piece, I've got all kinds of reference for my saw to ensure that those cuts on that tailboard are indeed perpendicular. If you got a good sharp dovetail saw, you can blast through that, hardly even noticing the extra thickness. Great hack. As simple as it is, the flat miter is sometimes one of the most difficult joints to get right. Now, you can do a lot by using a shooting board to get it perfect 45s, but I found this clamping method, or this hack, to be fantastic for pulling that joint nice and tight. And I'm going to show you a couple of variations of it. So here we have 2 pieces of stock that are what looks to be 2.5 inches wide. Yep. Now, what I'm going to do, I've already gone in and shot it so it fits nice and perfect, nice and close. I'm going to take about the midway point and I'm going to line it up with this line, which is approximately at the midway point on that face right here. And then I'm going to clamp it. Now what I've done is I've adhered some sandpaper, some cloth back sandpaper on there to prevent it from slipping. Line that up again. I'll go in here and I'll take a clamp. Now you want to protect your piece of wood, so if you need to, you got to put something in there. But I'll clamp that one, and I'll do the same thing on the opposite side. Line that up so that it's pulling right through the middle of the joint. And then clamp that one on. Now I've got to put the handle on the opposite side. Oh, wait a minute, now I want it on the top side. Now you'd go ahead and glue that, and sometimes it pays to go in and put a couple of clamps here and here to hold that, make sure that that's properly aligned. And then you simply clamp across the 2 pieces. And as you pull that tight, it'll pull that joint together and allow for perfect clamping. Or you can go in now and reinforce it if you're doing it with screws. Sometimes I've had to do it, I've had splines in there and I still want to pull it tight. So what I did in that case is I simply hollowed out the center to allow for the splines, yet I still made contact on 2 outside edges of the joint. So it's pulling the force right through here. These clamps are keeping it from sliding, and it ends up being a perfect miter joint. If you're doing trim and you've got something on the inside edge that prevents you from being able to clamp against it. Now this is MDF, this was window casing, and you can actually get a sufficient glue joint from just MDF onto MDF. Don't need anything else. Fasten that to the wall, you're all set. But you can't clamp against this. So in this case, I modified my jig. I used self-adhesive sandpaper on here. And again, what I'm going to do is line that up so that the center line of that pad where the clamp is going to sit is going to meet somewhere right about in the middle of the joint. Now on this one, I want a little more force, so I'm using a C-clamp. Now you need to protect your painted surface, so you'd have something in there to prevent that from marring the surface. And then you do the same on the opposite side. Actually, if you just measure like that, that'll give it to you. Now, just grab a couple of clamps and I'll show you what I meant about lining up the joint. Here's how I would do this one. I'm actually going to glue this one up. Apply glue to one side. You always want to make sure you spread that. Now I've got a painted surface, so that'll easily come off, any squeeze out that is. Now I'm going to align these 2 pieces. And then I'm going to use a couple of clamps with nice clean faces. To go in there and hold them in place. Not too tight. And then I'll come in with my longer clamp and simply pull that tight. Make sure that you're clamping in this case, right through the center of it. So you don't want to have your clamp sitting up here or down too low. You want it right in the middle. So the force is pulling that. Make sure these don't slide. Just loosen that a bit in case it allows it to move a small amount. Pull that tight. Let that sit for 20 minutes to a half hour. Take it off, and you got a great glue joint. You can scrape off whatever little bit you get left on there. If you're building a case and it's a mitered corner and you've got to clamp it somehow, I want to show you a great hack for that. So I've got a couple pieces of plywood, miter cuts on them. Now I want more than just a butt joint here, and I also need something to help with the alignment. So I've cut a long spline in there with a plywood spline to match. Sorry, I cut a long groove with a plywood spline to match. And that'll go in there and help line those two pieces and also offer us more glue surface. But there's my clamping, my miter clamp. And what I've done is I've taken what we used on the flat miter, only made a longer version of it. I've glued sandpaper to one side to prevent it from sliding. Now, we want to come in here and take the center of the joint, which is essentially where that spline is, and I want to go in the middle of the clamping pad. So we kind of want to line those two pieces up. Not terribly critical, but you don't want to. You want to avoid pulling it either out open or closed. And if the force goes right through the middle, you got a much better job of having that joint close the way you want. Now, I'm going to reach in here with some fairly deep clamps. Now, if your inside is going to be seen, then you've got to put some kind of a pad on there to protect that. Now, the handles are on the outside on this one. I'm going to put them on the inside on this one. And we'll just eyeball that to get it approximately in the same spot. So right about there. Now, we glue this up, put the spline in the groove. Make sure everything is flush. Now, I want to clamp right across. I'll have to come in from the underneath. How am I going to get this now? Move this over. I'm going to put 3 clamps on this. One on the outside, one on each of the outside edges, and one in the middle. Move that over a little bit. Of course, a little bit of squeeze out is exactly what you want. Then you know you've got the right amount of tension. You're tight on the inside, you're tight on the outside. 30 minutes in the clamp, take that off, and you've got a perfect miter. That's a great hack for doing casework. This is a great hack for small boxes. Now, we make saw boxes in our shop, and we use a finger joint, somewhat modified. But if you can imagine going in and trying to glue all of those joints with traditional wood glue and a spatula and trying to line it all up, almost would make it so that we couldn't do it profitably. So instead, I'm going to show you something even better. So I'm going to put these two pieces together. Now we've got this joint just tight enough that it's going to allow super glue to wick. So this is thin cyanoacrylate. You can either do it from the inside, or if it's a nice box, you'll do it from the outside. Just put enough on there that it'll wick in and around the joint. You don't need to use any accelerant. Let that dry, and it'll be as strong as any wood glue joint would be. And you'd have but also, the best part is it allows you to assemble the box, line it all up, get everything perfectly square, and then put the glue on, let it sit for 20 minutes, and you're good to go. And we trust that joint in order to be able to ship our saws through the mail, so it's a strong joint. If you enjoy my method of work and like my style of teaching, click on any one of these videos to help take your woodworking to the next level. Now, I've always said, better tools make the job so much easier. If you click on the icon with the plane and the chisel, it'll take you to our website, introduce you to all of our tools that we actually manufacture right here, as well as our workshops, both in person and online. Good luck.